I wanted to cover the question, what did your parents say about your tattoos? I decided to dedicate an entire kind of like story time video to explain that, just because I do have a lot to say about it, just so you guys can have like a better understanding of why my parents reacted the way they did. So before we get into the reactions of my parents, I wanted to give you all a little bit of background of my parents. So both of them were born in the 1950s in the Philippines. My mom was born in Manila, and my dad was born in one of like the many islands. I can't remember the name of the island, so forgive me. But yeah, they grew up in different parts of the Philippines. But they were both raised in very traditional Filipino households. And for those who might not know, Filipino culture, especially from their generation, often holds conservative views on many aspects of life, including the perception of tattoos. So I did do some research just out of curiosity, and I found that traditionally in the Philippines, tattoos were seen in various lights depending on the region and era. Historically, indigenous groups viewed tattoos as symbols of courage, beauty, and even social status. However, as time passed, especially under the influence of Spanish colonization and later American occupation, the perception started shifting dramatically. So by the time my parents were growing up, tattoos had become associated with rebellion, criminality, or being a social outcast in conservative or traditional circles. So knowing this information, you can imagine that getting my very first tattoo wasn't just a personal choice, but I was unknowingly making a cultural statement in a way. So this is all relevant because I'm trying to let you guys know that my parents are super, super traditional and obviously view tattoos in a negative way. So let's take it back to 2017. And the reason why I want to start there is because that's when I got my very first tattoo. My very first tattoo was black and gray roses, and they were on my left upper arm. And I believe I was about 21, 22 years old at the time. And keep in mind that I've been fantasizing about getting like a full tattoo sleeve when I was like 17, 18 years old. But because I was a full-time student and still had to pay off student debt loans, I wanted to start off with one tattoo. I remember bringing up the idea of getting a full arm sleeve to my mom just for fun back when I was 17, and she immediately said no. And obviously I was like very young, so I wasn't expecting her to say yes. So I wasn't too hopeful that she was going to say yes to the rose tattoo, but I tried anyway just because a small part of me thought that she would be a little bit more open to the idea of just like one or two like roses on my arm. So I decided to give it a shot and ask her anyways. So I remember trying to gauge the right time on when my mom was in a good mood to ask, because she worked all the time and she was always like in a bad mood right after work. So I remember like strategically waiting like after dinner time when she was like winding down to ask. I remember slowly approaching her while she was on the couch in the living room trying to relax, and I knew I was gonna ruin her night. I casually asked her if I can get the rose tattoo, and even showed photos of some of the work that I wanted to get. Honestly, I was a little hopeful because it's not like I'm getting a skull or anything like quote unquote scary as my first tattoo. Like it was like this nice, delicate, almost fine line tattoo, and I didn't think she was gonna be too harsh on it. But she briefly looked at the pictures that I had, and she had a pretty disgusted look on her face still. Like she was kind of like, why do you want this? And even after trying to convince her that these pieces were light and not too dark, because I knew in the past when I would show her photos, she would be like, oh, that's too dark, that's too big. So I would try to like convince her, no, like it's lighter, it's smaller. And near the end of it, I showed her a smaller tattoo of like one flower, and it was like maybe like this big. Like it wasn't like even smaller than that. And she saw the size of this and she said, maybe if it was a little smaller, then maybe. And I obviously wasn't happy with that answer because I didn't want a very small tattoo of a flower. I wanted 3. Even though she clearly said no, that didn't stop me. I made the risky decision to go ahead and book an appointment with this tattoo artist. So I booked the appointment about like 2 weeks later. And I remember feeling incredibly nervous, but so excited to get it just because this was my very first tattoo. And I obviously was nervous because of the pain, but I was mostly nervous at the fact that my mom would find out one day. So I wanted to share that first story because I wanted to give you guys an idea of how my mom is. So this part may be pretty offensive, but there were times where she would call tattoos dirty or ugly, and I think that is to be expected. Like, to me, that's a normal reaction for anyone over like 50 or 60 years old who don't like tattoos, right? I was a little offended, obviously, but I mean, at the same time, like, my mom and dad were brought up in very different times, so it's just natural for them to have these like negative perceptions. So that first tattoo was pretty much just the beginning. Every single person that I know who had tattoos would warn me all the time that once you get your first tattoo, you don't stop. And I can confirm that's absolutely true. And I don't remember the exact moment when my mom had first seen my roses tattoo, but she obviously was not happy and made me promise not to get more. And spoiler alert, that obviously didn't happen. As you can see, I slowly got more and more tattoos after my first one. I got more florals on my other arm. I even got a hand tattoo. I got like these 3 geometric birds that are now covered by the sleeve. And you would think after the first few times, like, I would get almost like scared of my mom, just because she kept telling me no more tattoos, no more tattoos. And she was clearly unhappy, but I think it's one of those weird things where when someone tells you not to do something, like, it makes you want to do it even more. And since I was younger back then, I think that was like a very normal and common thing that young people would do, you know, kind of going against their parents' wishes and having that little rebel phase. I knew I was truly addicted to getting these tattoos when I got my hand tattoo. Like, that was crazy that I did that. And I remember my mom was like, "You are never going to find a full-time job with this hand tattoo." And I didn't blame her for saying that to me. Like, she was probably right. I got incredibly lucky and still ended up getting a job during this time, like an office job. And this was the tattoo where I think my mom like kind of yelled at the first time. The story is slowly building up. And by the way, I haven't mentioned my dad at all yet, just because my dad is a very like reserved and quiet guy, in comparison to my mom at least. So even though he never verbally said anything bad about my tattoos, like, I could tell he still wasn't happy. Like, he would just give me weird looks around the house. But for the most part, he was never verbal about how he felt about them, but I can just tell he wasn't happy. Fast forward to 2019 when I unexpectedly started working at a tattoo studio in Toronto. So I was working as a front desk receptionist, but I also had plans to become an artist. And the studio let aspiring artists to like work at the front desk reception area while being an apprentice. So I went ahead and tried to do that. And you guys already know my mom was not happy about that. She never took it seriously. Like, she kind of thought it was like a little phase that I was going through at the time. And she was counting down the days where I would leave that job. But I worked there for about a couple years. I had access to like 50 artists who specialize in very specific styles, and they were all so talented. And I was like in tattoo heaven. Now that I'm looking back and reflecting, this experience really impacted my life a lot, because I ended up blasting like 70% of my body during these 2 years, which is insane. So if you guys thought I was already crazy for getting all these like floral tattoos and stuff before I worked at the tattoo studio, you guys are gonna think I'm insane once I start telling you guys the amount of tattoos I got in this short period of time. So I got 3 whole tattoo sleeves, so that includes my arms, and my one leg, and then a chest piece during my entire time at the studio. And at this point, I thought there was absolutely no way I was able to hide these tattoos from my parents. Like, no way. Especially during the summertime, right? So I managed to plan out all of these sessions during the colder seasons. So I was able to wear like thick sweaters, long pants, that kind of thing. So my parents didn't suspect a thing. But I started getting extremely anxious when the weather started to slowly warm up. I had AC in my house. I was able to like still wear those baggy sweaters and long pants around the house. But what the hell was I gonna do if I had to step out of the house during the summertime? I only really had time to go out during the weekends, and my parents were both home. There was no way they were not going to see these tattoos, right? I'm not gonna lie, I was also low-key planning on moving out just because I knew it was not feasible to hide my tattoos constantly. And the only two solutions were to A, keep covering my tattoos around my parents, and B, move out. And so I started slowly thinking that moving out was the better option for me, especially long-term, because I mean, I was technically able to move out already, like financially and mentally, but I was just kind of holding off on the idea because I still wanted to save as much money as possible before doing that. But like this whole tattoo experience wasn't helping that. So I started thinking about that route more and more. But the short-term solution was to keep covering my tattoos, and that's what I did, unfortunately. So in the summertime, I would suffer and wear these like lightweight cardigans whenever I had to go out, and I had no choice but to wear long pants when I left the house. And I would even take that extra step and carry like my shorts or like a skirt or whatever that I wanted to wear in my bag, and I would change out of the pants and wear what I wanted to wear in the washroom or something. So I really did the most when it came to covering my tattoos, just because I didn't want to deal with my parents' reactions, especially my mom. So I did that for pretty much like 3 years. And surprisingly, like it was weird. They didn't even make comments. I thought at some point they would be like, aren't you a little too hot with that cardigan on at 32-degree weather? And even when we had to visit some family here and there during the summertime, I would wear that and they would not say anything. Were they thinking it? Probably. I mean, any normal human being would probably think that. But because they weren't asking that, I started to think that they were onto me. Like, I think they were kind of like, okay, I think she's hiding something like underneath and doesn't want to show us. And I think my mom chose to not pry and ask, because it's kind of like that idea where what I don't know can't hurt me. And that is a pretty sad mentality to think, but I think in this case, that was probably what my mom was thinking at the time. Like, she just chose to not think about it, didn't want to know about it, just because she really disliked tattoos that much. Fast forward a little bit, this was around 2018, 2019, and things started to get really bad when my mom started seeing little bits and pieces of my tattoos peeking out of my sweater or pants. Like, for example, I have like a cherry blossom chest piece, and she would see like, she would see like the branches and the little bit of leaves peeking out on my collar, and she cried. She didn't actually see the full tattoo. She just saw a little speck of it like peeking out, and she cried. And I didn't know how to react, honestly, just because I did feel really bad. But at the same time, it's like, you know, it's my body and this is what I chose to get. It was like a really weird mix of emotions when I first saw her cry like that. So if she cried at that little speck of tattoo showing, I can't even imagine her true reaction if she just saw it bare, or even my sleeves and everything, right? Once that happened, I was like, there's no way that I could tell her that I got like my full leg done or like the rest of my tattoos. So after that incident, she surprisingly didn't bring it up again. It's that idea of like, if I don't know or if I don't see it, then she doesn't have tattoos, even though that's not a healthy way of seeing things. After months, she was aware that I had more. It got worse and worse. I'm not gonna show you guys pictures of this, but she would write little notes around the house. And she would say very absurd things about tattoos. An example would be like linking cancer to tattoos and how like tattoos cause cancer. Like she would literally like handwrite that and just like place it in the living room or something. Both of my parents are very religious. They're both Catholic, and I was also raised Catholic. She would also write little notes saying how like God looks down on tattoos, like it's not very holy. I'm just paraphrasing, that's not the exact wording. So the minute she started writing those down, I was like, I cannot live here. Like there's absolutely no way I can live here. Like I was getting really fed up. Even though I wanted to be truthful and to show her all of my tattoos, I knew that wasn't gonna happen in a good way because just based off of her previous reactions. So yeah, I started seriously looking into other places at this point, but I didn't tell her. I just kind of like did this on the side until I found some solid options. And I luckily found a place right before COVID happened. So about 2 to 3 weeks before I was set to move in, I reluctantly told her, well, both my parents, that I was going to move out. At first, she didn't believe me. They both didn't believe me, actually, and they thought that I was just kidding around. It was a mix of emotions for her. Like, I think deep down, she probably saw it coming just based off of what was happening with our relationship and her negative perceptions of my tattoos. I believe I was truthful and told her, like, I can't, like, be around here because I know you don't like my tattoos and I don't want to, like, stress you out. Like that was the main motivator. Honestly, it was just, I didn't want to see her super stressed and cry. I just couldn't take it anymore. You know, like this is who I am. I want to be free and open to show my tattoos around the house. And I just couldn't do that. I was like trapped. She knew that. She eventually respected my decision to do that. So it was like a mix of emotions. Like she was sad that I was going. Despite the tattoos, we still had a great relationship. We never had big fights aside from the tattoos really, and we didn't really have any other issues. So keep in mind that both of my parents know of my other tattoos, but they don't know the extent of them. They know that I have like a chest piece, or you know, they know that I have some kind of like tattoo on my ankle, and they also didn't know that I had 2 sleeves. Correction, I think I only had like this one full sleeve completed, and this one was not completely done. Like I think I just started it, but still, like they were not aware that I had all these other pieces done. But I was very excited to move out because I was finally able to stop wearing like heavy sweaters and pants around the house, especially during the summertime. That was honestly killing me. And it was great to just have that burden off of me, and I was just way less anxious, and I wasn't constantly being bombarded with thoughts about my mom and her opinions of my tattoos and blah blah blah, because even though I'm gonna visit them a lot, I can at least be myself, and that's what I wanted, just freedom. We're almost at the grand finale of them finding out about the rest of my tattoos. Fast forward to when I finally moved in my first place. Everything was going well up until when COVID happened. So there was that lockdown that happened. I got laid off at the tattoo studio that I was working at. And obviously my mom was ecstatic when this happened because she obviously hated that I worked there. So this period marked another huge breakthrough in my life, because ever since I got laid off, that's when I started rethinking my life and what I wanted to do. So my previous goal was to become a tattoo artist, but because I was unable to be an apprentice at that studio anymore since there was lockdown, it forced me to think about other options that I wanted to do. And back in high school, so I promise this is relevant, back in high school, I remember I didn't know what I wanted to do after graduating. My group of friends at the time, it seemed like they all had their lives planned out. They were all really good in math, science, etc. And I wasn't. Like, I was never really into like math and science and going into those subjects. So that was very limiting for me in what I wanted to do. And I remember asking one of them, like, what do you see me doing? Just to see what she would say. The first thing she said was, I can see you being a fashion influencer, particularly on Instagram. Like, she was so specific. And around this time, Instagram had just become a very popular app. Fun fact about me, you know those fun little like yearbook superlatives or whatever they're called? Like, they have a section in the yearbook where they vote on like random things, like who has the best hair, who has the best smile, who is most likely to take over the world. Like, I never took that seriously, obviously, but I won most fashionable. I guess makes a lot of sense given the kind of content that I do now, right? Because of that, like, my group of friends knew that I was like really into fashion. They always thought that my outfits were always like put together. And I even had a fashion Tumblr. So back in the day, like, Tumblr was a really, really popular blogging website, and I made like a separate fashion one, not of me sharing my outfits, but me sharing like other outfit inspiration. I was like known as like the fashion girl in high school. So that's why she had said, I can see you being a fashion influencer and sharing your outfits on Instagram. I remember being offended, surprisingly. I was honestly offended that she said that, because at the time, people weren't viewing like influencing on social media like that seriously, if you know what I mean. Like, it wasn't really considered a job. And I would argue even today, a lot of people still don't take it seriously, even though a ton of people want to become influencers now. But that's why I was offended, because I didn't really view it as a real job, which is very ironic to say, because I'm currently a fashion influencer. And that interaction with my friends stayed with me, because throughout university, I couldn't help but think in the back of my head, what if I had started an Instagram account? I started to kind of resent the fact that I didn't try. To be fair, it was really difficult back when I was like in high school and early university to pursue that idea, because since I was living with my parents, it was really hard to create content there, just because at that point I was already like tattooed, and it would have been really hard to create content when my parents weren't in the house. Also, on top of that, I was focused on getting my degree, so I wanted to focus on school also, just to get that out of the way. So when the lockdown happened, I started to revisit that idea of me finally being able to share my outfits on Instagram. So I made the decision to start that. And obviously I wasn't doing that full time. I would spend all of my free time trying to grow my Instagram. So I was sharing not only my outfits, but also my tattoos. And I slowly started gaining traction and got my first, I believe, 10K followers within 6 months. And I was really happy that it was slowly working out. And after 2 whole years of actively posting almost daily, I grew to 300K followers, and this changed my life. But when I say changed my life, I don't mean it in a way where my lifestyle had changed drastically, but because that happened to me, I'm now able to do it full time, which is such a blessing. And I honestly do think it was a mix of obviously my hard work and work ethic, but if I hadn't looked the way I did, so this includes like my face, my body, my style, but not to mention my tattoos, because I understand that my tattoos are very eye-catching, and I do honestly think it played a huge part in growing my account. So that's why I mentioned like me working at that studio really opened up a lot of doors later on in my life that I didn't even think was possible. So the reason I mentioned my social media profile is because this is how my mom found out about my tattoos. Not only was I hiding the tattoo sleeves from my parents all this time, but they also didn't know I had a social media account. They had no idea that I was like sharing my outfits, sharing my tattoos to just like random strangers on the internet. I didn't want to show my mom my Instagram initially because of the tattoos. Like, it wasn't just the outfits that I'm showcasing, but I'm also showing a lot of my body because of the nature of my Get Ready With Me videos. So obviously you can see everything. And I didn't want to give her a heart attack from seeing my Instagram like that. And I didn't bother telling them because since my parents are so like traditional, it's really hard to explain to them like what Instagram even is. Like, they know what Instagram is, but they don't understand how you can make money. And before the Instagram growth, like, it was kind of just like a side thing. Like, I was taking it seriously, but I wasn't expecting that it was going to replace my full-time job, right? So I just like didn't bother telling them. I think only my sister knew about it. They only knew that I had like full-time jobs. I then started working in the PR and marketing industry for a while. So they were only aware of that, but not like my Instagram or anything. So I believe my mom found out about my Instagram sometime last year. I think it was like in the summertime of 2023. So it was actually April when she messaged me. I just pulled up the texts, saw and watched her Instagram. No question, you look gorgeous and lovely outfits. Nicely done, but it's just too much tea. So keep in mind that she meant tattoos, but she can't bring herself to say the word tattoos, that she calls it tea. So anyway, she says, I was surprised, ... shocked. And that's all she said. So yeah, at this moment, my heart dropped and it just completely caught me off guard. I had no idea she was ever going to find out about my Instagram like this. Just because, you know, my mom, she's familiar with Facebook, but she doesn't use Instagram. So I was just surprised that she even saw that. So my guess is that someone told her about it, but that's besides the point. So I responded saying, thank you, Mom. I wanted to show you my social media accounts and my tattoos because I thought you'd be proud, but I know you don't like tattoos. I love my tattoos though, and they're a part of who I am. I'd love to show you more of my outfits and stuff, especially my Instagram. And then I went on and talked a little bit about how I make some of my income through Instagram. And then I said, I know you don't like the tattoos, but I hope you can overlook them because I'd really like to share my fashion content with you. So this is my way of trying to get her to be comfortable with my tattoo somehow, and to be a little less judgmental. She was really proud of all my hard work and how it's been paying off. And regarding the tattoos, she said that she's not really a fan of too much tea covering too much of my arms and thighs, but yes, I'd like to see more of your beautiful outfits. So as you can see, she is obviously not completely accepting of the tattoos, but I think this is kind of like the first step into her accepting them fully. And within the next few interactions with my mom, she started slowly showing a little more interest in my Instagram by asking a few questions about like my outfits and the settings that I was showing, but she would never bring up the tattoos, which was to be expected. And because of that, I still was reluctant in showing all of my tattoos in person. Like, I'm still wearing long sleeves and pants whenever I see them. But to be fair, I do mostly see them around like the springtime and fall and winter, just because a lot of these occasions that I do see them all happen to fall during those times. Like, for example, Christmas or my birthday, because my birthday is like late March, so it's still pretty chilly. And you know, like my sister's birthday is in fall, so it's like all these events are not in the summertime, so just by chance I don't need to wear like a t-shirt. I have thought about slowly showing her more and more just to get her more used to them, but I think also, you know, I'm a little traumatized with her previous reactions, despite her being a little more open to my tattoos after seeing my social media. But I think I'll just have to give that some more time, personally, just because I don't think I'm ready to do that yet. But yeah. So that's pretty much what's happening now. I also want to give a quick disclaimer that my relationship with my parents are great. I don't have any problems with them. I love them so much. And I wouldn't say that this tattoo situation has ruined my relationship with them at all. I just want to give you guys a true depiction of what happened when I first told them and showed them my tattoos. Yeah, that's pretty much her first reaction. I can give you guys, I guess, like a follow-up of how she really reacts in person after seeing it. But she technically did see my tattoos, even though it was just on social media. Thank you for listening to my entire story, and I will see you in the next video.